Hello and welcome to today's stream. We are going to be doing some Golang today to work with the API that we have been building, which should be a lot of fun, I hope. Well, if you enjoy watching people struggle to write code, you're in the right place. Hello, Laravel Online. Thank you for joining me. It is good to see you here. Must be early where you are over in the States. So, I asked a few people, I posted it on Twitter, should I start from scratch? A few people said yes, so I thought, what the hey, why not? So, all I've got so far is I've set up my Go module. I'm using Goland. It's amazing. VS Code is actually pretty good for Go code. Like really, really good, but I'm a JetBrains guy through and through, so I'm going to use this. There's no external libraries currently, just a standard Go SDK and my Go module. We're all good. We can start. So I'm not going to assume too much knowledge of Go for anyone watching. So if you are a Go developer, probably the wrong place to come, but stick around. Maybe you can point me in the right direction. Right, hello everyone, hello. Let's start. So the first thing we ever do with a Go program is to create a new Go file, and we're just going to call this main. This is our main file, it's package main, and what we want is the main function, and we'll just do something really simple now, like line, what's up? Don't even need that. So run. Boom. What's up? We got it. So if we can go to our terminal and do this mostly. Go run main.go. So what's up? We got our Go program started. So we need something. Let's be honest, we definitely need something. I'm not going to write all of this from scratch. So we need to use a command line package, which is super handy, called Cobra. Cobra is fantastic for building CLI apps in Go. Things like the GitHub CLI app, the Hugo CLI app. So many things use Cobra. It just works. So I need to do a quick go get on GitHub SPF13 Cobra. Get that added. Awesome. It's added a mousetrap, Cobra, and pflag. Pflag is like just another package. Go tidy, we'll clean that up later if we need it. So what we tend to do is we create a new directory called CMD, and this is where our commands go. It always starts with a root, and we need to work from here. So we go and we say var. We wanted to create a variable for our root command. This needs to be a Cobra command. So to use this, we want to be running env. The short description, wow, that is some big overview. There we go, short. There we go, short. So env, the CLI app to help you keep your environments in sync. You can add a long description. I'm just going to kind of copy the same thing across because it's not vital for me right now. I'm going to add a version to it. I'm going to start this with a 0.0.1, nice and simple. And then we have like a run E command, which is like run and potentially error. So we're not going to return an error. We're just going to return nil. So now if I just run main go, I'm getting what's up. What we need to be able to do at this point is execute. No usages. Awesome. So we need a func execute here. And what this needs to do is basically execute that root command in effect. So what we do is if error, oh, Jesus, I'm not typing well today. If error is root command.execute, and the error is not nil, then we want to, basically we just want to return error failed to run. This is basically like sprintf in the PHP world. What I'll do is I will new line it and drop the error in. Then we'll return an OS exit code of 1. Then in our main.go, we can pull that in by saying cmd execute. And what cmd will do, it will link through to this directory or that namespace, that module, as we call it in Go, and it will call execute. Now, if we have multiple files in here with execute, it's going to start getting confused which one we want. So we only have ever have that one execute, basically. So now let's run it again. Go run main.go. My wife is feeding me lamb.
Nice.
Thanks, random. So from here, we want to start thinking about how do we want this package to work? What commands do we want? Let's open up a PHP storm that we had yesterday. Come down to this README. This is what we decided we wanted. So we want to be able to register our device, register our shell, and we want to be able to sync. So what we're going to do to start with is we want to kind of initialize our command. So we're going to have env init, which is, I'm going to keep documenting it in the PHP repo because it's where I'm keeping a running kind of list of how I want to approach this. We want to initialize the CLI app, basically. That's our first step. And what this needs to do is it needs to create that config file to start with. So create a new Go file called init, command, bar init command. This is going to be a Cobra command. What we want to do, we want to have an init function on here. And what init will do is it will kind of, before this command is ran, it will kind of do this. So from here, we can say root command, add command, init command. We just want to kind of register this under the root command in effect. The way we want to use this is init. The short description for this is initialize a new NV CLI and add the long, and we're just going to kind of do the same thing there. And runny, we're just going to return nil for now because we don't have an error to return. So now again, let's run that, and what we'll do is also run help. We've got generate auto-completion script for specified shell, help about any command, init, which is initialize a new MV CLI, and then at the top, MV, the CLI app to help you keep your environments in sync. So we've got a good start. Yeah, I've been kind of flirting with Go for a while, to be honest. It's something that I've kind of wanted to really dive into more over time, but it takes a while. It takes a while to really get your head into it. Now, there's one Go module that I know we're going to need. That is called Go Home Dir. So I need to say go get github.com Mitchell H Go Home Dir. And what this does, it's just a nicer way to get the user's home directory for whoever's running the script. So what I want to do is in my init command here, what I need is I need to get that user's home directory to start working with it. So we're going to say home and error is equal to home dir. Then if error, I don't know how I can turn that off. Not equal nil. Then we want to fmt.printf error fetching users home directory %v, and we'll drop in a couple of new lines. Error os.exit1. At this point, if that's passed, we will have the user's home directory. So what I'll do for now is I'm just going to quickly print line on home, and that's it. So we run that again, no issues. So go run main.go, shouldn't do anything. If I add init on the end, I can see that I'm getting my user's home directory perfectly. So what we want to do with this is we want to start initializing our storage, our file system. And the kind of idiomatic way to do this in Go is to have a new directory in the root called pkg, which is like you've got your command and then you've got your package. And that's what pkg is kind of for. Like in your PHP, in the PHP world, you'll probably see src for source. You see it in a lot of JavaScript. However, you used to see kind of lib for library. This is just your Go package, everything within here. And what I'm going to do in here, I'm going to create a storage directory, because that's not store. Let's refactor and rename storage there. So that's our storage package within our application. So what I'll do is I'm going to create a storage script to allow me to start working with it. And this storage script is, I want this to be kind of somewhat fluent in terms of, I'll zoom in a bit actually so we can really focus. Somewhat fluent in terms of how we want this to work. Yeah, I come from a Laravel world. It needs to be Laravel-esque for me to be happy. So we're going to create a file system, which is a struct. This is going to have a path, which is a string. So to initialize a new file system, we need to give it a path in effect. So we need to create a method to basically just kind of create this file system. And then we can return a new file system, and that's all we need. So that will give us a file system to start working with. And then from there, we kind of want to be able to set the path. So what we typically see in PHP is like, this is a class. This is kind of like its constructor. And then to start adding methods to like the file system class is we'd have to start adding functions and passing in the file system here. And then we say, okay, so this is keyboard gone crazy. Come back. Here we go. Path string. This wants to return a file system. So there we go. So basically what we've got here is, let me just quickly return fs. Like we've got this is our class. These are the properties on the class. This is its constructor. So you can actually, assign path here if you really wanted to, but I don't want to. I want it to be fluent. I want to be able to say, okay, so file system, new path, do something. So at this point, I need to say something like fs.path equals path and return. So we've got our method on our class setting our property. It's a different way to think about it, but you eventually kind of get into that approach. What we also want to do, we want to see if like a path exists. That's a common thing for me when I'm working with the file system. I want to say, okay, does this file, this path in the file system exist? And I just want a nice, simple Boolean return to say, cool, yeah, it does exist. It does exists. So basically, I want to just say, do that, my bad. Path. Return os dot is not exist error. So basically what we're doing here is stat returns a file info describing the named file. If there's an error, it'll be a path error. So then what we can do returns a Boolean indicating whether the error is known to report that a file or directory does not exist. So this underscore basically means that if I wanted to do something with this, I'd do that in Golang. So, I can get the error and I can get the file. The thing to remember with Go is that it can return more than one variable or more than one thing back from any method. If you don't care about what it returns, you add that as an underscore like that. So this is how we write Go. It takes a bit of getting used to, if I'm completely honest, but we will get there. So in our init over here, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we can get a new file system, a new storage mechanism, right? So we can say fs is equal to storage.new. We've now got our file system. That will probably fail, but we'll see. Let's just go run init again. Name declared and not used, not a problem. For now, we'll just underscore it. We've got an empty struct. Perfect. Which means we can start working with it. So what we want to do is we want to say in our initialization, we want to say that so usually we do like that in PHP, right? We want to say if file system.path, and this is where we can pass in home. So we can put that back over there. So if home, kind of like old school JavaScript a little bit here, /.mv.config.json. Let's put that back to a slash, sorry. Doesn't exist, then we want to do something. So if the config doesn't exist, then we want to basically work with it. Otherwise, we're going to return nil because we kind of we've already initialized if we've got that file in effect. So what we want to do is come over to our storage again, and we want to kind of focus on like creating a directory at this point. So we will go func, we'll pass in the file system. And what this is a pointer. And so you're saying use the file system that is in memory already. Basically, Go does a lot of kind of memory optimization and garbage collection for you. But you still have to use it right. So we want to create a directory. We want to pass in like the permissions, because what we're going to do is we want to create the directory for the path in effect. And what this will be is os.filemode. And this wants, because I'm used to Laravel, obviously, I want to return something that I can chain. So if exists, or sorry, if it doesn't exist, then what we want to do is basically we want to make dir all. Try and remember, make dir all. Then we want to pass that path, which is the FS path, and the permissions that we are passing through. At this point, we could error. So if the error does not equal nil here, after we've tried to create it, then we want to printf on this and say failed to create path pass through the error and os.exit 1. So it's a bit kind of, it takes some real getting used to write Go code and be comfortable with it. Like if I was writing this in PHP, I'd be looking at it and just kind of shuddering. But this works. There might be a better way to do this in Go, but I'm not 100% sure. What do I want to do here? I want to basically, if I fail to create, I just want to die and just say, oops. Otherwise, I will return FS. So what we do in here is, okay, so create the directory for this path. If it already exists, just return as I'm expecting you to. Try and make the directory. If it fails, exit. If it doesn't fail, move out of a loop and return that file system. It's nice and clean and somewhat easy to kind of do here. So then back to our init command, what we want to do is basically say, okay, so if a path doesn't exist at this point, let's get the file system, set the path to this again, and then, my bad, directory. We want to create the env directory at this point. We want to create the directory for env, and we want this to be 0755, kind of your default directory permissions. At that point, we want to say, like, error equals, this is where we need to write a file. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to how can we write a file, basically. So the way that I want our configuration to work is that I want to kind of give it a Go struct and say, take this struct, convert it to marshal it to JSON and write it to the file. That's kind of, I want it to be kind of all in one, just go do it. And I don't care, just do it. If it fails, let me know, but I don't want to do anything other than just give you a struct and allow it to just do what it needs. So let's focus on that write method here. So func file system, we want to write something. Now this could potentially return an error, so we'll add that. What do we want to pass into here? We want to pass in some data. We want to say, just take some data. It can be any interface, but I also want to pass through the kind of file permissions as well. You know, I want to write this file with these permissions, and that is it. To work with this, we want to get the JSON data from the interface, basically. So we want to take that interface and turn it to JSON. So we need to use a JSON library, and we want to marshal indent. So marshal indent there. So we passed in the data. Do we need any prefix? No. Do we want to indent? Just space. I don't know why. Just the way that I've found it works for me. There might be a better way to do some of this. And if you are familiar with Go code, please let me know. Because I am not like the best at Go. I can write Go. It's about as far as I'm going with this. Okay, so if we fail at this point, what we're failing on is because we failed to marshal script to JSON, basically. I like to be very kind of explicit with any of my errors, because I think we've all used applications where the errors are just, crap. Let's be really honest. They can be crap sometimes. So yeah, I like to be super specific with mine. So finally, if we've managed to turn that struct into something that we can use JSON-wise, then we can say, okay, just return OS, write file. The name of the file is fs path. That's where we want to write it. The JSON data is what we want to write, and the permissions is that. It's quite clean, right? It's relatively easy. We're taking a structure, a class. We're turning it into JSON. If it fails to turn into JSON, let me know an error. Otherwise, write to the file. And what that will do, why the reason we're just returning it is because that will return an error if there is one. It will return error or nil, basically. So that's how you'd use it. Error equals error nil log fatal. So the way we want to use this in here is if error is fs.path home plus mv/config.json, error does not equal nil, then we want to format printf failed to save config to file. That's the error. I need to pass the error through with a couple of new lines. And what we want on path is we want to write. So the interface that we want to use, what do we want to send over? Well, that's where we need to kind of get something new. We want to pass like an interface over, interface over, and then we want to pass through some permissions. Now we're going to go for standard permissions. How could I hide this? That's really annoying. Standard file permissions of 0644 on like a Mac or Unix style system. So now we just need to focus on how can we create this part. Now it's failing, like it's not going to be good right now because we need to like look at how we can create our config and what do we want our config to be. Now that's when we get back to what is the purpose of this application, and it is to kind of sync our device. So I can create a new directory for device, and I can create a new Go file within there called device. So this is where the real kind of work is going to be done, because what I want to be doing here is creating some new config, basically. I want to say, okay, yeah, give me the config. Give me the basic config, and I want to kind of write that to file. So we need our first struct. So type config struct. This is our class, as it were. So we want our API key, which will be a string. Now, when we want to turn this to JSON, we want this to be lowercase. Then we have a URL for a string. When we marshal it to JSON, we want this to be the URL. We can now save that. So Go has a fantastic way of converting data. This is like our class. This is our property. This is the type. And if we want to turn it to a different format, this is how we do it. Like I could call that API key like that, and JSON, it would return as API_key as the name. So it works really well for marshalling data. And that is why Go is so fast. In my eyes, that is why Go is so fast at doing all of this. So that is our config, and we kind of want to create a new config at this point. So func new config, we're going to return a config there, and we're going to return and config. That's it. So, I mean, we can like start adding parameters in here to start with if we really want to do, but I'm going to save that for a little bit later. So what we're going to do down here is we are going to just come and say device new config. That should create the file that we want. We're going to start filling more details in on that later, but this should save it. So let me quickly cat on .mv config. This is kind of what I've got so far. Nothing super important, but I want to remove mv so that I don't have that to make sure that this runs. So go run main.go init. Now if I cat that again, I've got my JSON data in there. It's not indented nicely, don't get me wrong. It's horrible JSON to look at, but we can worry about that later when we actually start filling in some information. But, you know, if I run that again, it returns quicker because it doesn't actually need to do anything. So we've started, which means we can come over to here. This one is working. And then next, what we want to do is we want to kind of build out our device information a little bit more so that we can start having it available. Wrong app over here. That means we need to focus in on device a little bit more over here. So let's kind of go through how we're going to do this. We want a way to kind of add the key, add the URL, register it. We want to kind of go through and kind of build everything up slowly. Now, this isn't going to be our final config. What we're actually going to do is have kind of like a multiple classes that we build up to create this final configuration. So what I will do is we'll start building that out now. Now, we need our device. We want to kind of save our device information in a struct as well, because we don't want to have to get it every time that we go through and build stuff. Like, it just doesn't make sense in my head. So we want the name of our device, which is a string. When we convert it to JSON, we want that to be under name. We want the type string, JSON string. The OS, which is a string. When it's JSON, it is also string. Ah, what am I doing? OS type. This is when like I talk and type at the same time, and my fingers follow my kind of mouth instead of my head. So then we want our architecture again is a string. When we convert it to JSON, it's going to be architecture. So this is all very familiar to what we had over here, where we look at our register and device. OS, architecture, type. It's all familiar stuff if you've been following along. Our identifier is a string. In JSON is identifier there. I'll auto format, which is great. So that's like our two main configurations. So identify is the last thing. That's important there. So next, we kind of want to get like what's our saved state going to be? So type out saved config is a struct. Going to have our device info, which is a device. We're going to save that to JSON as device, so it's easily accessible or savable. And then we have our CLI, which is our config, JSON CLI. So we've got these three classes, as it was. We've got our our CLI configuration, we've got our device information, and we've got our saved config. So next, what we want to do is we kind of want to be able to create a new device. So we've got new config. Let's add a func new device, which is going to return a device. Return at device. Perfect. So once we've got our device, we're going to have some setup instructions for it. How could I organize this? I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a types file within here, and I'm just going to move these across. Error out for a bit, but it'll be fine because now it's back. So we've got our device here. We've got our config here. What I might do is, for now, I'll keep it as is. It's fine. It's fine. It's all good. Sorry, my internet was a little bit funny there. So what do we want to do? Well, with our config, we want to be able to fill that in. So func C for config. We want to be able to do something like add a key. Our key will be a string. Wrong key. And that doesn't want to return anything. So what we can do is just say a key equals key. Perfect. We also want to be able to add the URL. Wrong key. Config. Add URL. Which is a string. Like I could chain these, but I don't want to do too much chaining. So we can tie that all nicely together. Oh, damn it, what am I pressing? Nice, here we go. So we've kind of done those two things there. So that is on our config. Now this is our device here. So what I might do actually is go and create a config file here. Grab all of that config stuff. Move it to config. So it's nicely separated. The next thing we want to do is basically we want to create a new saved config. Oh, you haven't left yet, but you need to. So kind of what we need to do is we need like a way to configure stuff, right? We need a config command to start working with this. Otherwise, the whole thing's completely pointless. So we're going to have, if I come back to here, to README, we're going to have there we go, configure CLI app. So nv config. That's what we kind of want to do. And we want that to go through a nice simple, like we could pass arguments of like key is bloody blah, but I don't want to do that. I want it to be kind of like a guided process. So we're going to go that approach, and it'll be interesting. I'm running a contest on my channel. Not sure if it's okay to mention to your viewers. Giving away a 3-year subscription to any JetBrains products for 2 people in October. So go check out Laravel Online. Chance to win a free JetBrains product. Good call. Good call. Okay, so let's just go ahead and start creating this. We want to say we want a new config. We want to be able to create a config command. So var config command is a new Cobra command. Use will be config. Short is going to be configure the NV CLI app. Long is going to be exactly the same thing, just to make it easier. Long is going to be that. And then we're going to want to run e. For now, we will return nil, and we can work through it. So let's just make sure that everything is where, yep, that is how I needed to do it. So we need an init command in here as well. Func init. We want to register this with our root command. So root command dot add command config command done. So now if we come over here and we go run main.go help, we should see config in there. Configure the MVCLI app, initialize the new MVCLI app, and then we've got help and completion, which are like the 2 defaults. So how do we want this to work? That's kind of like the important thing. To do this, we're going to want to use a different package. And what I like to use here is something called Bubble Tea, which is a beautiful way to write kind of terminal user interface applications. Just go to Charm Bracelet Bubble Tea on GitHub. You find it, but I'm going to focus on actually building it here. So what I need to do, I need to import a couple of modules. I want to import Bubble Tea itself. So I can say, go get me some bubble tea, please. And then once it has done that, sometimes it takes a minute, depending on your internet connection. I'm currently live streaming from Wales, so I might get this in the post one day, who knows. Oh, there we go. And then finally, we want to go get on one called Bubbles text input. We want a specific bubble in effect. We want the kind of the Bubble Tea approach to run a program, and then we want a specific bubble. And lip gloss is a great way to style, by the way. Just awesome, absolutely awesome to use. So the way that this works, if you've ever used like the Elm architecture, you'll be familiar with this. It takes a while to get used to. Don't get it. It can really kind of blow your mind. So I want to build this out now. So we need a new type. I need to be able to type. We might have an error message, which is an error. We're going to need that later, most likely. Then we want to create a model, which is a struct. We're going to have text input, which is text input.model, and it could produce an error. There we go. So next, we want to initialize this model in effect. So we can say func initial model, this will return a model. And let's create it. So our text input needs to be text input.new. Idiomatic go yet again. Our placeholder for this text input is going to be super secret API key. We want it to be focused. We want to set like a character limit for like, I don't know. I don't see anything being over 150 characters for an API key, but beyond that, it's just getting silly. Width, we'll just stick with like, I don't know, 20. I think that's how much is visible, perhaps. And then, where am I? Here I am. We want to return a model wherever text input is TI, and the error is currently nil. There we go. Perfect. So we're creating our initial model at this point. So back on our config command, what we kind of want to do is create a new T program and say, here's the initial model for the program. It's how kind of bubble T works. So our program is, I need to import bubble T. Let me do that here. T is time bracelet bubble T. Add a quote there. And where am I? Here I am. T dot new program, initial model. If underscore error is program run, and the error does not equals, this is all in the docs for bubble T, by the way. So I know I've done it a few times. So I'm just going to fmt.printf failed to launch. I don't even know what that's meant. Program is %v, have a couple of new lines. Here's the error, and then os.exit1. Cannot initialize the last time. Wait a minute. Where am I? Here I am. Right, that and that. I should fix it, I believe. Use initial model as type model program optional model. Okay, so that's because I've not finished building the model, basically. So every model, it needs, you need like the way to create it, but then it needs specific models on it. So, for example, func, let's go on the model, and it needs an init method. This will return like a T command. And what we can say here is text input dot blink, I believe. That works. We need like the view for that model. So go model, this is on the model, here's a view. This needs to return a string, which sounds weird, but the way that it builds up views, it is basically a string. So return format printf. The way that we want to pass that back is the format is what is your API key? Give it basically a couple of new lines. Then we're going to give it a value, a couple of new lines, and then like a final value there. So that needs to be given something else. So we can say m dot text input dot view, and the next thing we want to give it is like a escape hatch, I guess. So press escape to quit. That should be, I need a comma there. And what we're going to do is we are just going to say, give it an extra new line at the end. So what's your API key? Fill that in with the view, and then fill that in with the escape to quit. That'll give us a nice kind of bit of breathing room to actually interact with this. The next bit is kind of like the messy bit, I guess I'd call it. Not perfect, but it works. So on the model, we want to be able to update. When the model updates, we get a message, which is a T message. And we want to return the model and a command back. So t.model and t.command. So the way that we want to do this is say that var cmd is a t command. We want to do a switch statement on the message, and we want to get the message type this. So then we can do a case t dot key message, like this is a specific key is pressed. Then we want to switch on the message type. We want to say, okay, so what key was pressed? So case t dot key enter. If we press enter, if we press T Control C, so that if we copy something, or if we do a key escape, then what we want to do at this point is create a new config and device save. Kind of where we're going with this. We want to go, okay, so once we've entered our API key, build up our config and save it. And so we should, at this point, be able to get a new device. So our device is going to be device, new device. We have a device. Perfect. What we'll quickly do, however, is we will do like the error message. So here's the case for that one. Type there. That needs to be that. That can be deleted. I'm trying to get my head into where I am. Okay, so handle some errors. So let's say we get an error message back. We want to kind of do something differently, right? We want to say that the error for the model is basically the message. You know, the message being passed through. If the message we're getting is the error message, do that. and then return the model, new line, sorry, return the model and nothing. We want to just kind of set it to that and keep working. Then once we kind of ran through that switch statement, we can do get the text input, get the command, say m dot text input dot update. What we need to pass through to that is the message. And then finally, we just return the model and the command, return model and command, which means all we got to do is this bit here. It's all looking good to my tired eyes. What time is it? Almost 12. Cool. I can probably just fire through this part now. Not too many people watching, so I won't have to explain too much, which is handy. So on our device, we want to be able to basically create all of the information that we need. So we are going to want to get the name, the type, the architecture, all of that good stuff. So let's just fire through. Anyone watching, questions, ask away. Otherwise, Steve is doing it. Right, we want to be able to set the name, and we are going to return a device because we want it to be changed. So we can get the host name from the OS host name. If we get an error, then equals nil. Then we want to F and error getting host name. Here is your error, and here are a couple of new lines. os.exit exit 1. Let's move on. We can then set the name to be host name and return the device. Next up, we want to get the type of device. Now, this is where it's going to get a little bit messy because we need to kind of execute a command and do stuff. So get model. This is not directly attached to the device, but I know I need to kind of like get a string out of it. And I did actually talk about this yesterday. So our command is going to be exec dot command. The name of the command is system profiler. Arguments we want to pass through is sp hardware data type. We basically want to get the hardware data type. It's output or an error once we get the command's output. If, why do I always do ID? If the error is not nil, then what we want to do is fmt.printf failed to get hardware information, %b, new line, have an error, and OS exit 1. Well, at this point, we should have output from the command. So what we want to do is we want to kind of pass the output to extract the model name. So for line in range of strings, we want to split the strings, string output. We want to separate that by each new line, \n. Basically, go over the output by line by line. So if the string contains well, this line contains model name, then get the parts of a line by saying, give me all the parts. This is the same, I suppose this is the same as kind of implode at this point, or explode. Can't remember. I always get those two the wrong way around in PHP. So get the line, line, and split it by that. So if the length of the parts greater than 1, then strings.trim, you want to trim the space parts 1. It's a bit messy. Let me just do that. To return that, basically, I believe, or nil. How I want it. Oh yeah, I want to be able to return 2. I'll return 2 arguments, string and error. So basically, there's a string, there's the error. Nice and simple. Finally, what we will do is, if all of that fails, return an empty string and an error. So format errorf, model name not found. At that point, we weren't able to get an error, the model name from the hardware data type, in which case we're going to fail. We're just going to not be a happy chappy, as we say in the UK. Right, okay, so let's carry on. Next up, we want to actually set the information, which is like the type of the device. So we can just give that some real estate there. Func D for device. Set the type. We will return the device so we can chain. So model or error is get model. That will give us that. If we do get an error and it is not nil, then fmt.printf failed to get the device model. Let's get that on. There we go. Error and then os.exit1 model. There we go. So at this point, we can just say d.type equals model. Turn D. So what we're doing here is get the model from the getModel method. If we error, then we fail to get it because it errored, in effect. So if we can't run if the command fails for any reason, just die out because we just want to, we're not going to be able to do the next part. Then we're going to loop over each line of the output. And if it contains model name, you want to split it on that character because of how the output comes, and basically get the second part, like the value to the key value that's returned, and return that as a string or nil because there's no error. If we were unable to find it, then return an empty string and a new error so that we can catch it up here and say, okay, so we actually did error. That would just say failed to get the device model, model name not found. Nice and simple. Die. We did get it, so cool. Set it to a type, return myself, so I can then start adding more to it. Next, we want to work with the OS because that's the next kind of part of the struct. Device, set OS, that will return device. So we can say that our operating system is the runtime OS, return D. Nothing too complicated with that one. Same thing with architecture. E star device. Obviously, I've done this bit before. I remember it from last time. I don't know go that well that I can just write it like this. I have done this before. Runtime dot go arch. No, go arch. There we go. Return D. We've got the set architecture. So, like the final piece of the puzzle, the identifier. Oh, my wife is on the bus with my daughter. I better open up my daughter's camera who's asleep and make sure she is okay while the wife is out. All good. But it does mean I'm going to have to look at wrapping this up. So I will make this kind of this part, the last part. So we want to get the identifier. So func get identifier. This will return string. So we want the output and the error from another command. So exec.command. Command we want to run is IO-reg minus RD1 minus C. There we go, minus C. Sorry, I'm too used to PHP, so I automatically reach for single quotes. So this is where we want to say we want to get the IO platform expert device. I believe that should be correct. If error does not equal nil, what's going on here? Delete variable out, argument count mismatch. Really? Okay. Yeah, Steve, go home. You're drunk. Bye. Error fetching the device UID. %v, new line, error, os.exit1. All good. At this point, we can then kind of work with the output of that command, much like we just have. So our output is the string value of out. So we want to get the start of that string. Start is strings dot index output substring, and we want to get the IO platform UID. I believe the IO platform UID is the disk UID, but in most Macs these days, you don't replace your disks. So I'm sticking with that for now until I can think of something better. So it may not be perfect, but it's going to work for me. So if the start is -1, what it means is that I couldn't find the IO platform UID in the output. So I can fnt printf failed to find IO platform UID in output. No. Do I need to do anything? No, I don't. So that printf can actually be a print line. And again, we will new line. And os.exit 1. So now we want to extract the UID. So start plus equals length of IO platform UID that basically, I think that's right. So end is strings.index output start that, I believe that's right. And out. Again, if n there n I cannot type equals -1, then fmt.print line. And at this point, we have failed to pass the IO platform UID from the output. Line. os.exit because we have failed to get the UUID. Awesome. I know what I'm saying. So at this point, we want to return the output start to start plus end. Basically, just kind of get that bit in the middle. So get identifier. So we want to set the identifier. Func D. Right, this will be my last method before I go make a copy, I think. Set identifier. This will return device. So d.identifier is get identifier. Done. Return D. Then what we have is func D star for the device. We're going to have a setup method where we're just going to return a device. And we're going to say d dot name dot set type OS set architecture set identifier. Handy. Awesome. So in our config over here, we can just say d dot setup. Basically, we've got our device at this point, and we are good. So what's next? Can that need a save method on the device itself? I believe. Let me just kind of run. Go run main.go config. What does it give me? Here we go. Blah, 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 blah. It's not letting me quit because I've not kind of tied it all up. Okay, so just kill that, terminate. I'm going to call it a day there. I need coffee. So, thank you for watching me battle with Go. Enjoy the rest of your day. I will be back next week. I will be carrying on with this next week. I will schedule it later on today, tomorrow, this weekend. It will be 3 more episodes of this. Don't know what it'll be, but it'll be something. Drop a like if you like the video, if you like watching me struggle with Go. Drop a comment if you've got any feedback. This will be pushed up to GitHub a little later this afternoon in between meetings. Enjoy your day. Stay awesome. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to be notified for the next video. Have a great day. Goodbye.